All right, Brian, you and I grew up without dads, and we grew up without guides.
Yeah.
So I like to say this in the podcast, we're not gurus, we just want to be a guide to many that may even have parents and feel less equipped for this day and age, especially with a generation, a trend, the economy, how the world works now. It's just you got to keep up these days. You got to really do keep up. But for us, well, we didn't grow up with dads. We didn't grow up with leaders. And now there's this void in our hearts that we want to be that for someone.
You know, I heard it said like this: the best person you can help is the person you once was.
Correct.
Right? That's something I always say because it's the truth.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many guys I know that do have a father in their life and yet still is searching for answers, right? And then on the flip side, you look at two guys like us and many other guys that we do know that didn't have a father in their lives.
Yeah.
And it's a guy that you would probably want to model, you know? He's a good citizen, a good father, a great husband, well off, well-to-do. So, you know, it goes back to what we always say, that ignorance is a choice.
Yeah.
Because there are many men out here who have went before you, who have had worse circumstances, that has a lot to pour into you and a lot to give to you.
Worse circumstances, even, those who went through, or maybe have a bad story, let's just say it like that.
Yeah.
Who have seen it from a perspective.
How about a worse story, right? We all got a story.
Yeah, we all have a story.
Good or bad.
Good or bad, and it's depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
And I really like the fact that we're on this episode about ignorance because we do have the title here, Ignorance is a Choice, Break the Chains of Unawareness.
Yeah.
Like, now, I know in this day and age, there are so many things, so many podcasts, so many books you can read. You can work towards eliminating that unawareness, but there's always things that you'll be unaware of.
That's so true. How do you know you're sick if everyone around you is sick is something I like to say. If everyone around me is suffering from the same condition, then what I'm suffering from, if it's a problem, it's normal. No one's going to say I got a problem if we're all suffering from the same thing, right? So how do you become aware that what you're suffering from is truly a problem?
And I think that goes down to what are you paying attention to? Because I've got this little phrase here, knowledge isn't free, you have to pay attention.
I love it.
And I know it's that knowledge isn't power. I've heard that phrase. Knowledge isn't just, you don't just get power from just having the knowledge, it's applied.
It has to be applied.
Yeah. Applied knowledge.
Knowledge isn't free.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you something. You know, another term that we use when we talk about a value is we talk about time.
Yeah.
We say that your time can be invested, wasted, or spent, right? And when you talk about the cost and you say attention, I think attention is two things. It's time and focus. It's just not one thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because think about it for a second. In order to gain knowledge, the ability to know, you're going to have to invest some time in doing something. And not just doing it, but being dialed into it for a considerable amount of time. It may take a month. It may take years. It may even take decades. Yeah. Right? But it takes more than just doing something. It takes being focused, dialed into it.
That's interesting because I was listening to this productivity coach, and he says the difference between distraction and traction. And the difference is they have
focus.
There's no traction, as if you're distracted, there is no traction. Like you're multitasking, your focus is spread too thin, where it's not tunnel vision on this thing that you're supposed to be focusing on.
Yeah,
hyper focus.
We live in a culture, and I kind of feel like we're pulling away from that idea that being a Renaissance man or being a multitasker, what's another word for it when you're doing multiple things? A jack of all trades.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of pulling away from that idea that's something good, right? You really have to be dialed in.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I'm in a season where I'm dialed in, but I'm not necessarily mastering just one thing, if that makes sense. Now, what I mean by that is like I am the conductor.
Okay.
I'm the conductor of an orchestra. And a conductor is not a master of one instrument, but the conductor understands harmony.
He understands many things.
He understands how
coordination,
multiple facets of this big idea, if that makes sense. This big idea has multiple facets of it. It's someone that knows how to turn the levers to make sure a machine or a thing is functioning, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's like you're mastering this coordination of a thing. Yeah.
Think about a baby that's learning to walk. That baby's not learning how to read, write, talk per se, right? Like these are things that are just happening as they go about their business. But what that child is focused on is standing up on those legs.
Wow.
Right? Think about it. And they're going to do that continuously. It's the thing that they're dialed in on, that they're focused on. And all these other things, you're talking to them, you're feeding them, you're putting things in their hand, letting them dibble, scribble or whatever. But their main focus is that one thing. It's getting those legs strong. It's moving and it's walking. So yeah, I think we're all playing conductor in our lives at some point.
Yeah.
But like purpose is dialed in and it's focused on. And like, what is that thing for you, from the outside looking in? Yeah. I would think it would be communicating. I mean, I believe that you're a great communicator, but what I see you doing for the last 4 or 5 years that I've known you is refining that skill.
Yeah.
Whether it be the podcast, whether it be pastoring, ministering, whether it be mentorship, pouring into people. I see you refining that skill and mastering the skill set of communication. And it's just me on the outside looking in.
I can definitely see that. Yeah, I agree with that. It's interesting because this whole podcast just started out of you wanting to work on your public speaking. So with ignorance being a choice, we were working towards, hey, like we don't know, delved into this realm of communication, if you will, because we just didn't know we didn't know our potential could be cultivated in this, I guess, what would you call this, a platform? I'll call this a platform, right?
Yeah.
Because every platform needs time.
If we had to label it something, yeah.
Yeah. If a platform needs time, consistency, we're about to talk about that with ignorance. You got to be, if we feel like we're ignorant around something, we're going to spend some time on a thing, on a topic, if that makes sense. Yeah. But I do want to bring up this point because I heard this from a speaker. He said, all principles are microcosms to each other. And what I mean by that is because ignorance typically is connected to principles. Like if we're not aware of a thing, it's because we don't know the principle of a thing. And when I heard this, because life principles are typically ignored when ignorance is at play.
Yeah.
So if you're which is interesting, I've got ignored and ignorance in the same kind of sentence, if you will. I think that's the issue.
I love it.
Yeah, ignorance is connected to you ignoring the fact that there's a life principle at play.
But it goes back to what I said. How do you know what you don't know?
How do you know what you don't know? And I think it's the pulse that we're trying to give people.
Yeah.
And I think we're in a healthy environment where we're constantly like, we're in a growing environment. It's not a fixed mindset, but a growth mindset where we're like, man, like the potential is grand. It's beyond us.
Yeah.
And we're willing to tap into that. Now, I'm just learning this as well about myself. And I think I've alluded this to you as a friend. One of my leaders was speaking over to me, and I think he was just realizing that there were times where I feel, and he can sense unsettledness in me. And I know what he meant by that. And I think I know what he meant is because sometimes when you're growing, you go through growing pains.
Yeah.
And I think he was sensing there was a lot of pain over the growth development. There was more pain than growth, if that makes sense. Now, the pain is probably coming from a state of a mindset of like, I'm just got to keep doing and keep being and keep more. And I think I was losing the consciousness of, well, I'm just grateful for what I got right now. Like being content.
That's real, man.
Yeah. Being content, but also faithful. I think I was losing the faith aspect. I was being more discontent than being more faithful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what was happening is, and it's a product of growth.
Yeah. Wow.
The product of growth is change, right? As creatures, as human beings, we're creatures of comfort. We want to be in a place where we're stable, we're on solid ground. The foundation that we have is good, it's unmovable. But as you're growing, you're moving from place to place. You're moving into new territory.
Yeah.
And new territory comes with an unknown. Yeah. And that's what we fear.
Unknown, unseen.
Yeah, we fear what we don't know. We fear what we don't understand, right? But I think to overcome that means you need to be curious. right? You need to have some curiosity of what's to come. You need to have some hope of what's better.
Yeah.
You need to have this level of excitement about the unknown, you know, and I think what you was experiencing, and I experienced it myself because I want to grow.
Yeah.
I want to go to places that I've never been before.
Yeah.
I want to have experiences that I haven't had before, not just for me, but for myself and the people that I'm called to lead. And with that being the case, I know I'm going to experience some things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, I was sharing with Lil B the other day. We went to the gym and he worked out, and he was talking about how much his body was in pain. But I asked him, is your body any different than what it was before you started working out? And he said, yes. And I asked him how. He said, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm faster. I say, and it came from that same pain that you're feeling right now. That same discomfort that you're feeling right now is the only reason that you're experiencing this change in your body. Do you like it? Yeah, I like it. Well, pain is, you know.
It's powerful.
Yeah, what change is going to come with pain, you know? And you got to ask yourself, is it worth going through the pain, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, man.
He said something along the lines of, he feels like I'm striving too much. I need to be thriving.
Thriving as in enjoying the moment?
Yeah, because sometimes when you're playing this state of, I'm just trying to survive, that it only works for so long.
Yeah.
Like, I understand the hustle grind mentality. I see that in this day and age, which, don't get me wrong, hard work is important. But I also feel like I'm called to work smart.
Does that come from a lack of gratitude?
The surviving, the striving,
yeah.
I think so. I think it's just now I'm solely focused on the future that I'm not even being present anymore.
In the moment.
Yeah, because some of the things that I alluded to, and we're talking about ignorance here, because I'm like giving this guy a pulse. So like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, he asked me this question with our school. He's like, from the ratio of 1 to 10, how do you feel about how the school is growing and how everything is going around the school? Yeah. And this early childhood school that we've built from April to now, which is almost like 7 months going in, I said I was at a 6.
Okay.
Which is, you know, what I was trying to allude to is like, I just don't feel like I'm content because I'm constantly wanting to grow this.
6 or 7 months?
We're going on 7.
7 months as an entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
You're still in the growth phase.
I know.
Right? Like there's still a lot to learn, right?
That's my, I got a bad habitual pattern in my brain.
And it's
thinking
not you.
I'm trying to get to a place too quick.
It's not you, man. It's not you. It's the principles that you just talked about.
Wow.
Right? It took me 5 years of being in business before I realized that, hey, I'm paying my mortgage. I'm feeding my family. I'm clothing myself. Yeah. I'm writing my paycheck. It took me 5 years before I realized.
5 years?
Yeah, like how big that was. But the first 5 years was like, I got to make more. I got to sell more. I got to earn more. I got to hire more. I need more customers, right? It took 5 years. So what we need to realize is that you've only been a business owner, an entrepreneur for what? Let's just 6 months to a year, because there's been planning, right? Let's just say a year, because you had to plan, you had to process.
It has been a year.
So let's just say a year, right?
Before it started making income, it's essentially.
Exactly, before it started making income. Think about it as we talk about not having fathers in our lives,
right?
Not having men, not having mentors in our lives, which means there's a deficit.
Yeah.
Because if we had someone in our life who went before us and showed us the way, we would be filled up, right? Like what you pour out is what you were filled up with, right? So let's say we're coming from an empty place and you're in your 30s.
Yeah.
And then you become an entrepreneur at 31. You know, you're a little bit empty, right? You need to fill up that confidence, that ability, right? To be able to do something. You're not going to get 30 years of emptiness. You know, you're not going to be full after having 30 years of emptiness in 1 year, right? You've been empty for 30 years. You know what I mean?
Because the principle is at play there.
There's principles
at
play,
time
right?
hasn't been set.
It's an imbalance, right? There's an imbalance. You're trying to pour out, lead, strive, succeed, go places, but you haven't seen it, or it hasn't been poured into you.
The time hasn't passed yet for me to be in that incubator.
Correct. Yes. Sat down with Lil B yesterday, and I'm showing him his dividends and his stocks, right? I'm trying to give him this at 11. That way, 20 years from now, when he's 30, he's like, it makes sense.
Second nature.
It makes sense.
He's
Like I
get it.
understand
Yeah,
this.
I get it.
Right? Versus being 30 and it's like, what is a stock? What is a bond? Where do I start?
Truly understand.
Like what is patience? I can't wait 20 years for this to grow and develop, right? But if you've been waiting 20, 30 years and you've seen it work at play.
Yeah, that's good.
Wow, you've seen it work. You've seen that it took 15 years. You've seen it took 20 years and it actually worked. Why deviate from what you know works?
Yeah, it's based on experience. Yeah.
Experience.
Not just on the book knowledge and knowing it from other people's experience. It's your own experience.
A book can go in and come out.
Yeah, that's good.
And you'll be living off the past
It's
trauma.
diluted. It's diluted experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You'll be living off the 15 years of neglect, abuse, trauma, deficit, hurt, pain.
And that's why I think the Bible is the way it's written over thousands of years, and then people read it and they're just like, oh, I don't see any traction.
But they don't understand that those, like that's
You
why it took years.
Yeah, you got to experience that life.
You know, what really opened, so I hope we're not sidetracking here. I hope we're on the
Ignorance
same
is a
topic.
choice, man.
So I
Consistency is key. Yeah.
That's why I love reading the Bible. Like when I realized that this book is thousands of years old and the pattern is the same, I could just jump on the train. Just jump on that
Patterns
thing.
and principles, yeah.
The patterns are the same. Yeah, I got to be patient. This sucks. This hurt. This feel like suffering. But I got to be patient because in the end, I win.
The reason why we bring up patterns, right? With ignorance as a choice, we were seeing the patterns of ignorance through generations.
Oh, it's generational.
And I think about, like, just talk about credibility for sakes, right? Tony Robbins, right? This guy is guru, and I'm sure there's some sort of scrutiny and some weird stuff about him. But, like, the end of the day,
Everybody got something bad to say about somebody.
he talks about patterns. He's like, well, if you want to jump on the economy train of, like, starting a business, building wealth, like, you got to look for the patterns. Same thing with our lifestyle, what you eat.
Seasonal.
Yeah, seasonal. Yeah. And ants, right? We talked about this earlier. Like, ants prepare for winter. Throughout the year,
And it's
3 seasons of the year, they're preparing for the winter season. And I think we need to jump on that train, the pattern.
Preparation.
And talk about preparation. Ooh, I remember heard this saying. There is no preparation without expectation. So what I mean by that is if you're not expecting anything, how do you prepare for a thing?
Exactly.
So I think when we talk about ignorance as a choice, I think now let's start to choose the opposite of ignorance is awareness. Let's start choosing awareness now.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be aware. Now let's not be overwhelmed by everything that's going on, because that easily could happen too, right?
Yeah.
If we know that ignorance is a choice and we're choosing to be aware, now what do we need to be aware of now?
I mean, it's such a
What's the main focus here? Like, let's say if someone just realized ignorance is a choice, okay, now I'm going to choose to be aware. What would be the first thing you want them to be aware of?
I mean, the fact that I'm breathing every day.
I was going to say the same thing.
I mean,
Yes.
the fact that I woke up means that there is purpose. I mean,
You're here for a reason.
man, I'm here for a reason.
Yes.
Like we give reason to everything that exists.
Without us thinking about it.
Bro, I'm quicker to give reason to this microphone than most folks are to give to their lives.
Cup with coffee in it.
Right,
yes.
right. It's used to communicate. It's used to drink from.
We already
right?
jumped on the train or something.
But you're alive. You know, you're awoke. You're awake.
Yeah.
For a reason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's good.
But what happens is there are two visions that played here. There's the outer vision and then there's the inner vision.
Yeah, come on.
The outer vision is what you physically see, right? You know, and you can be overwhelmed and consumed by what you see.
good.
Right? You start seeing your debt, you start seeing suffering, you start seeing pain, right? But there is something that you want that you don't see. What you may want but not see is peace, love, joy, happiness, prosperity, you know, safety, security. Those are the things that you don't see around, you may not see around you, but there's a hope within you that you want those things, right? And when we begin to look more in, we begin to manifest those things on an outer plane, right?
Yeah.
But it all begins with like where your attention goes, your energy flows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I truly believe that, man. Like in prayer, in meditation, in fasting, right? We begin to bring those things into existence. Everything that you see was once somebody's idea. Everything that we have, that we consume and we occupy our time with was once something that dominated somebody's attention. Man, I think the world would be great with that chair right there if it had a soft cushion. If we could communicate from this place to that place without having to be in that place.
Right.
That's how we ended up with telephones. That's how we ended up with cell phones and computers and internet, because it started with someone having a great hope for something better on the inside, you know? And the same go, like I say, so I'm talking about physical things, like material things, mechanical things, but the same is for wealth. The same is for prosperity.
It's interesting you're saying all this, Brian, because I think about like whoever designed the thing, right? Whoever created this chair, whoever created this cup, whoever created this microphone assigned value to that thing. It's like I've
There was an
designed you,
expectation.
created you to do this expectation.
There was an expectation.
So you can't prepare without expectation.
at all.
So I'm thinking about when I was in the military, and I'd say I was like 7 years in. I remember laying in my bed in the barracks of the military. I was an engineer in the Army Corps, 7 years in. I'd done my training. I'm ready to deploy. I remember lying in my bed in a state of depression. And it wasn't a state of depression. It wasn't like severe or chronic. It wasn't like crazy. It was just like, I'm like, what the heck? Like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing here?
Maybe it was just deep thought.
And it is deep thought, but it was almost like,
Self-reflection.
self-reflection. But I was just like, I felt there was lack of, like, I still worked out. I still went to the gym. I did all these things. I don't even know if it was depression. It was just like, I was just laying there going, what the heck is all of this for? Like,
It was that burning bush moment.
explain what
Seriously.
burning bush is for those who don't know what that is.
The burning bush when
Moses.
Moses, of course.
Bible.
Moses he saw a bush burning. And well, actually it was on fire.
Yes,
Well, you can say it was burning, but it didn't burn up.
Yeah, it didn't consume.
It didn't consume. Yeah, it didn't.
bush.
It didn't burn up the bush. And he went over to the bush to, inquire what's happening here. Like this is a phenomenon that it's on fire, but it's not burning up. Why is that? And he went over to the bush, and God spoke to him, and He spoke to him saying, "I got something for you to do. Like there's a greater calling on your life, right?" And then he eventually stepped into that calling, went and got the Israelites out of Egypt and so forth. So that was you saying, hey, there's a bigger calling on my life. Like, what am I doing here where I'm at right now?
It's so interesting because I was empowered and equipped to deploy, to build homes and take care of humanity, if you will, because we were very focused on humanitarian work as an engineer, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I had all those things, but it was just like there was still something missing there. And I remember I was carrying that for years in the military, just going like, there's something more. I don't know what it is, but I'm just going to keep doing this thing.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to get at here with my story is I think there was traction trying to take place with responsibility. Because I had the responsibility of like my role, my task as an engineer in the Army Corps.
Yeah.
But also there was something else like drawing me to like this bigger call.
The masses.
Not
maybe?
that it would make me matter more or make me more, I guess, significant, whatever it is. Like, you know how people try to find that popularity game thing? It's like, no, it's not that. It was just something where I was like, I feel like I'm a piece of a puzzle that I need to be in somewhere, somehow. And then I find myself in Dallas, Texas, years later, like I'm almost 10 to 15 years later.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, this is it.
I love it.
Like, I just know this is it. Every time I speak to the teachers, every time I speak to the staff, we had a family event on Friday last week. It was a fall event, and we had hundreds of people there. We were just like, what the heck's going on? And I just knew something was right here.
Yeah.
Something was right. And just going back to the responsibility of a chair, the responsibility of a microphone, the responsibility of a cup right now. It's like something had to assign that responsibility to it.
Yeah. I love that part of your story. I love that you shared it because, it's easy for you to assign your responsibilities in the military to purpose and say, well, we were building homes, we were building communities, like we were doing good for people. Yeah. But when you look back to what you're doing now, like you're affecting generations to come. Like that's forward thinking. You're not taking care of the immediate 30, 40, 50-year-old. You're looking, you're raising up children who will affect generations to come.
Starting at 3 months.
I know, right?
Yeah,
they will have children, and their children will have children, and they will be our politicians, our doctors, our lawyers.
Yeah.
They are the future,
Yeah.
right? So, that's just me as a friend saying thank you, and
Thank
seeing the greater work that you're doing versus just running a school.
You know what's crazy?
And you're in partnership with who? Their parents and the grandparents and their future employers and their future employees. It's crazy.
And I know I'm going to say the cliche thing is like I give glory to God. Of course.
Of course.
It was not my doing, but it's amazing how you talked about deficit earlier. And we're talking about this whole topic around ignorance, right? Mm-hmm. But it's interesting how the state of ignorance that I was in years ago, and dare I ever say even when I was 2, 3, 4, 5. The kids that I'm serving now was all stemming from a deficit.
Of not having?
I didn't have a dad.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lack, there was a void there because I grew up without a dad for the first at least 7 years. My stepdad remarried or married my mum when I was about 6, 7, or 8. And then I moved into the family when I was about 12, 13. So because there was that state of deficit back then, now I'm here to fill in that deficit.
Of course.
Because of a deficit.
I agree.
Because of a problem.
I agree.
Solving the problem that I experienced myself and I don't want any other child to go through.
You're on assignment.
And I think that's the point here that I'm saying with responsibilities. Like something, when I say something, I know it's God.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that God is assigning the ability for you to respond to that deficit.
Yep.
I believe that.
So we've been in Dallas since 2008. Rough math, what's that, 16 years, 15, 16 years maybe? Mm. And when people ask me, how did you end up in Dallas? You know, that's the story we usually ask people. What's your name? Where you from? Oh, Tennessee. How did you end up in Texas, right? Or how did you end up in Texas from Detroit? And our cliche say God, right?
Yeah.
Because when we moved down here, me and my wife, we had only known each other for a year, right? Wasn't even married at the time. So, like, God protected her and sending her down to Texas with a stranger, right?
Wow.
Right. And we didn't have any friends. We didn't have any family. And I'm pretty sure her family was scared. Like, you don't even know this dude? And, like, where are y'all going to Texas?
Dude, we have the same story.
And, you know, I tell people, I kind of say it was for a job, but it really wasn't for a job. Like, I asked for the transfer. You know, they didn't send me. They say, hey, go to Texas. I was like, hey, can I go down to Texas? We opened up a factory down there. I was like, sure. I don't see why not, right?
Yeah.
So came on down here, man, with no intention on starting a business or, you know, having, like, none of that, right? But it's literally a God thing.
You came here in a state of ignorance. You didn't know.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at. I came here in a state of ignorance, right? But it took, but like I said earlier, it took a curious mind. Like, success lies in the curious. It lies in the unknown. What you don't have, you can have. What you want, you can have if you're curious enough to go after it.
It's interesting because we're very like-minded. We went through a very similar experience, Morgan and I, my wife and I. We actually was talking to friends of ours of our school. We met with them last night and we were telling them our story. Now, I feel like we're better at telling our story because we've said it so many times. Yeah, and I feel like now we're at a point where we can do it in 3 minutes. And it's a lot. Like a lot in 3 minutes. Yeah. So a real quick snapshot is, so when Morgan first met me, she was on her last month being in Australia.
Okay.
She's from Missouri. It doesn't even make sense. She lives on a ranch in Missouri.
Missouri to Australia.
Yeah, she had other countries to choose and she chose Australia. And she didn't just choose Australia, she chose a town in Australia, a city that no one knows about. No one in the world knows where Townsville is. And unfortunately, in the military, that's a place where not many people want to go.
Okay.
I got chosen to go there. I was like, God, why you sending me there?
People, you didn't want to go?
I didn't. No.
Wow.
Like, it's
nobody knows about it.
No one knows about it. It's like, it's a nice city. It's not bad. It's just, it's not like Sydney.
Exactly,
Sydney is
right?
beautiful.
It's not New York.
Sydney is amazing. It's everything there, you're right? So I got sent there. She gets sent there. Ignorance, right? It's so funny because I'm like, I was not in the season of dating. She was there for a year, for 12 months. And I meet her the last month she was there. Wow. She was about to leave. Wow. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to date this girl and think I'm going to marry this girl. Like, how can she be the one? And she kept pursuing me. And I was like, oh, well, okay, I'll give this a try. And then 3-4 dates later, right? She 3-4 dates. Seriously, 4 dates after, we're like, okay, I think we can do this thing.
Okay.
Talk about ignorance.
Right.
All my friends in the military are like, you're crazy, man. What the heck are you doing? You just met her and now you want to marry her? What?
But talk about principles at play, though.
Oh, man.
Underlying principles.
There were underlying principles because there was like this, when you know, like, man, there's something about her. And I'm not just saying this from like just being attracted to her. It was like she was saying things. I'm like, wow, you're like ticking all the boxes real quick here.
Listen, bruh, I'm telling you.
And the biggest box that she ticked is that she wanted to serve the next generation.
Wow.
That's where I think it goes back to that deficit when I was lying in bed, being depressed, and just like, what am I doing with myself? Like, what is this all about? I don't have a family. I want a family. It was like she was feeding into that deficit. It's like, it's her. It's her. And then, man, a year and a half later, moving to America. I didn't realize it was going to take that long. But
so the same with Janal. One of the reasons why we moved down here, one of the reasons why I wanted to come to Texas, why I asked my job, could I transfer, is because my wife, the girl that I had met, I was like, listen, my environment isn't conducive to healthy relationships. And my past record in relationships isn't good.
Wow.
I like everything about this girl. I like the way she think. I like the way she talk. I like where she's headed. I like her energy.
Wow.
There's something different. You know, it was a moment in my life where I felt I had something valuable.
Did you have calibrated questions to ask for those answers?
Yeah.
Same.
You know, like
I did too.
What are your dreams?
You know what you want.
What do you want out of life? Like, where are you headed? And she was vulnerable, and she allowed me to be vulnerable.
Oh, wow.
This is what I want. This is where I'm headed. Like, this is what I would like to have. I don't have it right now, but this is what I want. Do I see how I'm gonna get it? No, I really don't, but I'm gonna get it somehow, some way.
Wow.
And I think you're gonna help me get that. I think you're gonna be beneficial to my life. And I don't, not in a selfish using way.
Yeah.
But I was in love, and it was like I wanted to protect this thing. And my track record in this environment ain't good. So in order to protect this thing, let's go.
It's interesting you're saying that because I think with Morgan and I, the third date we had, I was testing her. I was like, let's meet at this spot, which is right by the ocean, right by the beach, and we're going for a run at 5 a.m.
Okay.
And she had to drive like maybe 30 minutes, maybe less than that. It was like 25 minutes.
To get to you?
To get to there. So it was a commitment. And it wasn't just a commitment. I'm asking her to go for a run.
Yeah.
And it was a test. And she's not up at that time. Like, this is not normal. Yeah, it was a test. So when and it was like, she even told me after, she was like, Joseph, I was not like, I was like, this is out of my comfort zone.
The things we'll do for new love. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I went for a run. And here's the thing. She was ignorant of my story. She didn't know my story. So I was like, hey, we kind of walked, we didn't run. We were kind of walking and talking real fast. And we're going up to this hillside where you can see the sunrise. And before the sun rose, I was like, hey, I'm going to tell you everything about me now. And I'll give you permission to go. Like, run. We don't have to keep continuing this.
Fourth, fifth date?
This is the fourth date. Well, third date, I think it was third date. And I was like, look, I slept with many women. I had many girlfriends before you. Oh man, I was in the party scene. I was like always drunk and hanging out with all the friends. This culture that's toxic, like this was my life. And I was like, you have my permission to go. Like, you're too good for me. Like, what I've seen, what I've noticed, what I've experienced, you're way too good for me.
I experienced the same thing.
I give you permission to go. You know what she said to me? She's like, okay, well, I've got a few questions for you. She was like, but is that who you are now? I was like, no. And my second follow-up question is that who you're becoming? I was like, definitely not. She's like, well, that's these traits, these things that you've told me about, that's not who I'm dating. I'm dating the person you're becoming. Wow. I was like, oh, there's a big check in the box. I was like, Jesus, I didn't expect this to happen. Okay, let's keep running. And we saw the sunrise, and it was all. And before she went back to America, and this was in Townsville, I remember this. We sat down at this restaurant, and we were just like grappling with how tough it's going to be. The immigration process is not a process for everybody.
And this was for you, your immigration process.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was both because we were planning for her to move back to Australia.
Okay.
That was the original plan. Plan B was to come here.
Okay.
So we sat down. I remember, I'll never forget this. And it was like, hey, we both kind of like bounced this idea. It's going to be hard. This ain't going to be easy.
For her to go to Australia.
Both. Whatever this looks like for us, it's just not going to be easy. And I told her this, and she has never gotten this since this was almost 10 years ago. I was like, there's always going to be someone more attractive. There's always going to be someone more convenient. There's always going to be an easy way. But we choose each other. She took that with her to Missouri. That seed that I planted there, she took it with her. We even broke up. We broke up when I was deployed in this period.
So y'all didn't come back together. She came back to Missouri. And
She went to Missouri, and she was just like, I've seen the world. I don't want to be here anymore.
Oh.
And she has never forgotten what I said to her. She even tells me to this day, I remember being in Missouri. I saw my ex-boyfriend. I think he was around. I saw my ex-boyfriend. I was like, I'm just done with this life. And I remember what Joe said. He said, there'll be people more convenient, more attractive, easy. Like, why would you do all the work? Why? It's like, but we still choose each other. See, she still chose me. When we broke up, I actually ignored her while I was overseas. I was deployed. Oh, man, I didn't even say this. Before I deployed, so she left, went back to America. I was preparing to go deployed in Papua New Guinea. Before I went to Papua New Guinea, I bought a ring. In faith.
Her a ring.
I bought her a ring.
Okay.
I left it at home as I deployed to Papua New Guinea. We broke up. It was the first thing I think about.
The ring.
I was like, who's this ring for then? And then it was like, I'd say 4, maybe 3 months of like us broke up. We couldn't communicate to each other because I was deployed. And then it was my birthday. I'll never forget this. The best birthday ever. I turned 30. I've traveled back to Australia. And then we FaceTime each other. And then we work towards our relationship again.
There we go.
And she remembers that statement that I said.
I love it. I'm not going to get into our story, but me and Jannar broke up too.
Well, you did share that story. Yeah. Well, it's posted.
It's so,
go back to when we broke up. It's on.
So relative, man. Our stories have so much in common, man.
Correlation. But as we conclude here, I think the biggest thing about ignorance is you've got to be aware, and also you got to pursue.
Yeah.
Once you're aware, you got to start pursuing.
Yeah.
Now, I know you and I are both Christ-like leaders. We believe in Jesus, right? And I know we got audiences that don't believe in Jesus. And for us to share with our brothers and sisters out there, if they're listening, what would you say when it comes to awareness, pursuing an idea that will move you towards awareness rather than ignorance?
Oh, man. Be intentional about what you're doing with your intention.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Scratch that, read.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
No.
Intentional with intention.
With your attention is what I meant to say.
Be intentional with your attention.
Intentional about your attention. Because we live in a great age, you know. There are two ways you can look at this. You can say that the world is falling apart, you know, end of days. But Jesus said you will always have those stories, right? There will always be war, famine, disease, like always, right? But there has always been health and prosperity and hope and favor, right? And we do live in a technological age where knowledge is at your fingertips, you know, the click of a phone, a screen, knowledge is everywhere. And there's some lies, but there's also a lot of truth out there. And I think what society has done to us, they said that, hey, folks are lazy. Yeah. We don't have to conceal information anymore. They're just not going to go look for it. We can give it to them and they still wouldn't consume it.
Dang.
We have so many distractions that you can put the truth in front of somebody and they'll still be consumed by the distraction and not accept the truth. So that's what I mean by be intentional about your attention, where it goes, right? We talked about mastery. Be intentional about mastery. We talked about we've talked in the past about skill sets and assets.
Yeah.
You know, in order to have something, you have to do something to become something, right? So buckle down, get focused, give your attention to the things that matters the most. You know what I mean? Like whatever that is. As a husband, it's family. As a business owner, it's customers and employees, right? As a living human being, it's honoring God and taking care of my body and my temple, so I'm able to sustain this life to run the race that He's called me to run, right? You know, and I know that sounds like many different facets, but I'm intentional about each individual area, right? I think what we do have is a generation of men, and I'm speaking to men directly, is a bunch of men that are just shooting aimlessly at success. Shooting aimlessly at happiness or whatever they think success is, whether it be financial gain, whether it be material gain, they just shoot aimlessly.